The screen went from routine to saturated in seconds. Over the black water of the Strait of Hormuz, tracks hardened around 3 U.S. Navy ships pushing through one of the most dangerous choke points on Earth. Drone warnings. Missile cues. Fast attack craft lifting off the Iranian coast. And inside the Combat Information Center, the first realization was brutal: this was not a warning incident anymore. This was an attack in a shipping lane barely wide enough to make mistakes. Because Hormuz is not open ocean. At its narrowest point, it is only about 21 miles across, and the actual shipping lanes are far tighter than that. 2-mile corridors. Tankers. Escorts. Civilian crews. Insurance underwriters watching satellites. Traders watching oil screens. A fifth of the world's oil and LNG supply usually moves through this water. If shooting starts here, it does not stay local. And now, according to US and Iranian reporting, it had started. What matters is not pretending every second is confirmed. It isn't. But the broad operational picture is clear enough. The United States said its forces intercepted Iranian attacks against Navy ships in the Strait and then struck Iranian military targets tied to those attacks. Iranian media reported exchanges of fire around Qeshm Island and blasts near Bandar Abbas. In plain English, the ceasefire had cracked in the worst place possible. That is where this story becomes much more dangerous than the title suggests. Because this was never just about a single strike. It was about what happens when a maritime clash inside Hormuz immediately starts pulling in air defenses, mine warfare, missile forces, regional bases, oil traffic, civilian airports, and alliance credibility all at once. A duel at sea becomes a systems conflict in hours. And once it becomes systemic, nobody controls the tempo for long. To understand why the US strike matters, you have to rewind just enough to see the trap both sides were already standing in. The war had begun months earlier, when US and Israeli strikes on Iran opened a wider regional conflict. A ceasefire in early April slowed the violence, but it did not settle the core problem. Iran still wanted leverage over the strait. Washington still wanted the strait reopened and commercial traffic normalized. That meant the most sensitive waterway in global energy markets stayed under military pressure even while diplomats talked peace. And the numbers told the story. Before the war, roughly 125 to 140 vessels moved through Hormuz each day. At one point during the crisis, Iranian authorities said only 23 ships had passed in a 24-hour period under their permission. That is not normal traffic. That is controlled access under coercion. A choke point had become a bargaining chip with missiles behind it. So when US warships moved back into the corridor, they were not just escorting steel hulls. They were escorting the idea that international passage still existed. That is why the early contacts mattered so much. Imagine the tactical picture from the American side. A destroyer or cruiser in the strait is already constrained by geography. Iran's coastline, islands, small boat bases, coastal missile units, drones, and radars all sit close enough to compress reaction time. Sea-skimming threats have very little water to cross. Drones can clutter the screen. Small boats can hide in civilian patterns until the last usable moment. In a place like Hormuz, distance is not protection. Distance is gone before the crew finishes the call-out. Now put yourself inside that CIC. A young air defense officer is not looking at one problem. He is looking at layers. A drone track may be a shooter, a decoy, or an off-board spotter feeding another weapon. A fast boat may be harassing traffic, laying mines, or trying to force a turn. A coastal radar may not fire a shot, but the second it builds a targeting quality picture, it changes the fight. Every symbol on the screen is A-B. Ranch in the kill chain. Detect. Classify. Assign. Commit. And if you guess wrong, a ship or tanker pays for it. That is why the US response widened so quickly. American reporting said 4 Iranian attack drones were shot down and a ground control station near Bandar Abbas was hit before it could launch a 5th. Reuters also reported defensive U.S. strikes on missile launch sites, on Iranian boats reportedly trying to lay mines, and on Qeshm Island after attempted attacks. In other words, Washington did not treat the danger as one isolated exchange over open water. It treated the entire launch architecture around the strait as part of the same battle. That decision is the hinge of the whole crisis. Because once you strike the architecture, not just the incoming weapon, you are no longer fighting a narrow defensive action. You are telling the other side that its coastal sensors, launch crews, drone operators, mine layers, and staging points are all fair game if they threaten transit. Tactically, that makes sense. Strategically, it is gasoline. And Iran had plenty of ways to answer without fighting on one axis. That is the part too many viewers miss when they look at Hormuz and see only ships. A clash in this corridor does not remain maritime. It spills outward immediately. Missile forces can reach Gulf bases. Drones can hit oil infrastructure. Fast boats can panic shipping. Mining attempts can freeze insurers and captains even if no hull is sunk. Political warfare can spread rumors of successful strikes that force military reallocations anyway. The geography is small. The escalation ladder around it is enormous. The first sign that the battle was already widening came from outside the strait itself. Kuwait reported that an Iranian drone missile attack damaged airport facilities and injured dozens. Flights were suspended before later resuming under tightened safety measures. The UAE reported intercepting missiles and drones in other phases of the crisis. While British monitoring and regional reporting pointed to ships damaged or set ablaze off the Gulf Coast. Even when the exact claims collided, the strategic pattern was obvious. The fight was no longer about one convoy getting through. Regional infrastructure was being dragged into the engagement ring. Now the operational map starts to change shape. A theater commander no longer sees a transit mission. He sees competing demands everywhere at once. Protect the ships in the lane. Keep Bahrain and Gulf air bases alive. Guard fuel farms and ports. Clear suspected mines. Preserve enough interceptors for a second wave. Reassure commercial traffic. Prevent allies from concluding that the US can shoot well but cannot stabilize the corridor. This is where wars stop being about valor and start becoming arithmetic under pressure. And arithmetic is ruthless. Every interceptor launched from a ship or land battery costs money, time, magazine depth, and future options. Every combat air patrol burns fuel and maintenance hours. Every escort mission ties down hulls that could be screening something else. Every damaged runway slows sortie generation. Every civilian merchant captain who refuses transit shrinks the political value of the entire operation. You can win the tactical exchange and still lose the strategic argument if the sea lane stays empty. That is the midpoint realization in this crisis. The battle was never really about whether one American ship could defend itself. It was about whether the United States could keep a global choke point functioning while under distributed attack from drones, missiles, mines, fast craft, coercive regulation, and regional retaliation. Once that became clear, no single platform was deciding the outcome anymore. Not the destroyers. Not the drones. Not even the strike aircraft. The conflict had become systemic. Look at how fast the logic spread. Mine-laying reports force mine countermeasure planning and helicopter coverage. Drone TH. REITs force broader air surveillance and electronic warfare allocation. Missile launches force rapid strike decisions against coastal nodes. Damage at airports forces runway repair and air tasking adjustments. Panic in shipping markets drives oil prices higher. And that, in turn, feeds political pressure in Washington, Gulf capitals, and energy importing states far outside the region. A few minutes of violence in the strait create consequences measured in weeks. Now bring in the human layer again. At Kuwait's airport, a damage control crew is not thinking about grand strategy. They are dragging equipment across broken surfaces, clearing debris, restoring enough functionality for the next arrival or emergency departure. In Bahrain, watch officers are sorting real tracks from rumor because false reports of a hit on the Fifth Fleet can shape decisions almost as effectively as a real one. In the Gulf Air picture, pilots on strip alert are calculating not just enemy range, but whether the runway they launch from will still be usable when they try to return. That is what a war spiral feels like from the inside. Not one heroic scene. 100 urgent corrections. And the sea itself keeps demanding attention. Because even after the US reportedly struck Keshem-linked targets, even after boats were hit and drones were downed, the strait did not simply reopen like a switch had been flipped. Reuters reported oil jumping as hopes for a deal were set back. The waterway remained largely closed for stretches of the crisis. Commercial flows were still badly distorted. Tactical success did not produce immediate normality. It produced temporary space. That distinction matters. The clean version of this story says the US was attacked, responded hard, and reasserted order. But modern chokepoint war does not give clean endings. Not when the opposing side can disperse launchers, exploit civilian traffic patterns, use islands and coastlines as sensor shelves, and choose from missiles, drones, mines, and political signaling almost interchangeably. You do not clear a fight like this. You suppress it, buy time, and pray your opponent does not find a cheaper second move. And Iran's second move did not have to look like the first. It could come as more warning shots at shipping. More mine threats. More missiles toward regional facilities. More drone operations from coastal sites. More ambiguity. More delay. That is the ugly brilliance of fighting around Hormuz. The attacker does not need to sink every ship. It just needs to make the route feel governable only by fear. Which explains why the US decision point was so important. Washington could have answered the immediate attack and then pulled back into a narrow self-defense posture, leaving commercial traffic to fend for itself behind statements and patrols. Instead, the reported pattern suggests a broader decision: treat the entire threat network around the strait as actionable if it endangers transit, and keep pushing conditions for passage even under flare-ups. That means hitting drone control, suppressing launch sites, attacking mine layers, escorting ships through safer water, and proving that the corridor is not ceded. It is a disciplined choice. It is also expensive. Because every day you keep that corridor open under fire, you are burning readiness across multiple domains. Ships need reloads. Aircraft need maintenance. Crews need sleep. Allies need reassurance. Intelligence needs to keep up with mobile launchers. And the moment your focus narrows too much, the other side can widen the war again, toward Lebanon, toward Gulf airports, toward desalination plants, tankers, or bases whose names were not even in the first news alert. That is why the phrase, "tensions explode," is actually too small for what this means. Exploding tension is the headline version. The military version is that a contested sea lane triggered a chain reaction across air defense, coastal strike warfare, warfare, base protection, logistics, civilian aviation, and global energy markets. The moment the US struck back around Hormuz, the message was not only that America would defend its ships. The message was that the corridor itself had become a defended operational system. Iran, in turn, could answer that system almost anywhere in the region. And once both sides understand that, escalation becomes partly automatic. You can see it in the pacing. Attack. Intercept. Retaliatory strike. Rumor of broader damage. Airport disruption. Shipping hesitation. Oil spike. Diplomatic scrambling. Renewed patrols. More threats. That is not a sequence designed by one brilliant commander. That is the natural rhythm of a war spiral once restraint begins to fail. The most revealing detail may be the least dramatic one: traffic. In a genuine stabilization, ship numbers recover, insurers calm down, ports resume planning, and routine returns. In a dangerous false calm, the missiles stop for a day but the corridor still feels poisonous. Captains wait. Crews hesitate. Governments issue warnings. Markets price risk. The strait looks open on a map and closed in human behavior. That is where Hormuz has extraordinary power. It does not need permanent destruction to create global disruption. It only needs persistent uncertainty. So did the US win this round tactically? Probably, in the narrow sense that matters in the moment. American ships survived. Iranian drones and strike-linked sites were reportedly hit. Small boat and mine threats were contested. Some protected passage efforts succeeded. The immediate message to Tehran was that attacking US naval forces in the strait would trigger fast retaliation against the network behind the attack. But victory in the narrow sense is not the same thing as control. Because control would mean the violence stayed where it started. And it didn't. It spread to airports, ports, shipping patterns, oil prices, diplomacy, and alliance nerves. It SP. Read to the next launch decision and the next convoy and the next rumor of a strike on a regional headquarters. Once the crisis crossed that threshold, nobody was managing a single battle anymore. They were managing contagion. That is the real lesson of Hormuz. In modern conflict, the decisive terrain is not always the place where the first missile appears on the scope. Sometimes it is the network around that place, the launch crews, the sensors, the mines, the runways, the escorts, the insurers, the logistics hubs, the political deadlines, and the global dependence that turns a narrow channel into a strategic trigger. You can intercept the weapon and still inherit the spiral. And that is why this moment should worry everyone watching it like a normal maritime clash. The Strait of Hormuz is physically narrow. The margin for miscalculation around it is narrower still. Once the shooting starts there, the sea lane stops being a route and becomes a machine, pulling ships, bases, oil markets, and entire governments into the same accelerating fight.